Have you ever been in a situation where you've written a riff and you're unsure if it really sounds good or not? Then once you add your chords and a few other layers, it just sounds boring or uninspired. One reason for this might have far more to do with your chords than the riff itself. One of the best ways I could think of to demonstrate this is by writing a riff that sounds pretty bad on purpose, and then challenge myself to try and make it sound at least somewhat listenable. As a rule, I won't change anything about the riff itself, but rather add layers around it to try and improve the overall sound. That way, you can see how an idea that might feel uninspired at first can still work. Sometimes it just needs the right chords underneath to bring it to life. So don't be too quick to throw ideas away. I came up with this pretty goofy riff to start things off. I'll play it first in isolation and then go over a few ways to, hopefully, make it sound much better than it currently does. Right now it sounds quite weird, almost like circus music to me. The first step I want to take to try and fix things is by adding some harmony underneath to bring out the better qualities of the riff, if they even exist. That means finding a bed of chords that can hopefully contrast or add a new sound to this melody instead of just following along with it. If I play some simple power chords that just follow the main notes of the riff, you can hear how they don't really add much, so it's not improving things in any noticeable way, as that inherent goofiness to the riff still exists with or without them. Instead, I experimented by finding chords that didn't use the root note of my melody, while also making use of much more colourful chords rather than simple power chords. You can hear how this newly reharmonised section really changes the entire feeling of the melody on top. Hopefully you felt that was an improvement, at least compared to the melody in isolation. Let's break down what's happening here in more detail. Typically, when I'm writing, I'm just hunting around for chords and using my ear to find the ones I like the sound of, over top of whatever melody I'm working with. But to break down why these particular chords work well over this somewhat awkward melody, I'm using major 7th sounds, specifically moving from G major 7 to D major 7. The first note of the melody starts on the 7th, found in the G major 7 chord. So pulling notes directly from the chord tones can work well when writing melodies, or in this case doing the opposite and building a chord around a note from your melody instead. When I move down to the D major 7, the melody starts on an E, which isn't a note that's present in the chord I'm playing. However, if I shift the F sharp in the chord down to an E, it adds a nice sus2 sound. Even though I'm not literally playing that as a full chord, both the rhythm and lead guitars combined help to blend the sus2 colour with the major 7th sound. It can be easy to default to the most simple progression you can think of, something that would just follow the main notes of a riff, like I showed in the power chord example. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it can sound predictable, and especially in a case like this, where the melody isn't great to begin with, it might not add much colour to it. To counter these types of situations, you can try using more colourful chord types so that once you add your melody on top, it's interacting with a much more complex foundation, and in turn, gives you back a more interesting sound, rather than just filling out the space or sounding kind of beige. Another way in which you can enhance a somewhat lackluster melody is by adding an additional melody to it, otherwise known as a counter melody. This is a secondary melodic line that plays alongside the main melody, designed to complement and enhance it rather than compete with it. It shouldn't detract from the main focal point, which would be the first melody, but instead create contrast and help support the core musical idea. technique is especially useful when a riff or lead melody feels too simple on its own. Instead of layering more of the same part or overproducing, a well-crafted counter melody can fill in the gaps and add harmonic tension. It can even draw attention to parts of the main melody that might otherwise be overlooked. I often find the timing to be really crucial when using these. If you start them either a little behind or in front of your lead melody, you can find a nice space for them to exist within. Making use of extended gaps between notes can also help to not overcomplicate the ideas, so you don't end up with something that clashes too aggressively. Taking all of that into account, this is what I came up with. You'll notice that when I play it over the original melody and chords, I'm starting at a half bar before the main melody repeats, then leaving 1.5 bars of space between each of the first few phrases, just letting the final note ring out each time. This supports the lead without treading all over it. Toward the end, it gets a little busier since the idea has already been introduced in the previous 4 bars. To recap these ideas, I'll play a final comparison, starting with the isolated lead melody, followed by a more fleshed out arrangement that incorporates each of the techniques shown in the previous steps. Now you can hear how powerful changing the underlying chords to your riffs can be. Check out this video next to learn loads of interesting shapes you can start using underneath your lead guitars.